Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a topic today that I know a lot of you are super curious about: fluency in English. It can feel like such a mountain to climb sometimes.
It really can.
And I'm excited to get into all the fascinating little details, all those challenges that can make it feel, well, tough. Luckily, we've got some awesome expert insights to guide us.
Yeah, we're going to be pulling from a whole bunch of experts who spent years really understanding how people learn languages.
Cool? So let's just jump right in, shall we? One of the first things that struck me when I was looking at this research confidence, or should I say the lack of it. It seems like for so many people, that's the biggest hurdle to actually speaking fluently.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation, isn't it?
I mean,
Well, if you're not confident, you don't speak as much, but then you're not getting the practice you need to actually become more confident. So it's this tricky cycle.
ooh, that makes a lot of sense. So how do we even begin to break out of that cycle?
Well, a lot of it starts with understanding why we lack confidence in the first place. Are we afraid of making mistakes? Do we think native speakers will judge us?
Hmm. Yeah, I can see how those things would hold someone back.
Totally. Sometimes it's even about cultural factors. Some cultures are just less likely to encourage speaking up or taking risks.
So it's almost like we need to do a deep dive into ourselves before we can even address the confidence issue.
Exactly. It's about figuring out where those feelings are coming from.
Okay, so self-awareness is key.
Hmm.
But once we've done that soul searching, what's next? How do we actually build confidence?
There are so many different strategies out there. It's really about finding what works for you. Some people find positive self-talk super helpful, like literally telling themselves, I can do this.
I've heard visualization can be powerful too, like picturing yourself speaking confidently in different situations.
Yes. And for some, it might be about finding a supportive language learning community, a place where you feel safe to make mistakes and experiment.
Ah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Surrounding yourself with people who are encouraging and understanding.
Exactly. So it's not about some magic be more confident switch.
It's about finding the right tools and support to help you build it up over time.
Exactly. And it ties into another big thing that keeps coming up in the research, this whole vocabulary versus fluency dilemma.
Okay, so we all know vocabulary is important, right?
Of course. But the experts are saying it's not as simple as just learning a ton of words. In fact, sometimes focusing too much on grammar and fancy vocabulary can actually make you less fluent.
Wait, really? You're losing me. I go- I always thought the more words you know, the better you'll be able to speak.
Think of it this way. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone's trying to use all these big, complicated words and it just sounds, well, awkward?
Ooh, yeah, totally. It's like they're so focused on sounding smart that they forget to actually communicate.
Right. And that can really disrupt the flow of conversation. It's like trying to juggle too many balls at once, you end up dropping them all.
So it's not about the size of your vocabulary, it's about how you use it.
Precisely. It's about finding that balance between accuracy and natural expression. And sometimes that means letting go of the need to sound super impressive and just focusing on getting your message across.
Mm. So maybe instead of trying to memorize every single word in the dictionary, we should focus on learning chunks of language.
Exactly. Think of them like prepackaged phrases or expressions that native speakers use all the time.
Oh, so like instead of memorizing delicious and meal, I'd learn that was a delicious meal.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those patterns and using them to your advantage. That way, you're not constructing sentences word by word. You're pulling from these ready-made chunks.
Makes sense. And that probably helps you sound more natural too, right? Like a native speaker.
It does. And speaking of sounding natural, this brings us to another point that the experts highlight the limitations of what they call textbook English.
Ah, yes. We've all been there, right? You learn all this formal grammar in the classroom, but then you go out into the real world and it's like,
Nobody actually talks like that.
it's a whole different ballgame.
It really is. And that's why the experts stress the importance of practicing English in real-life situations, not just in textbooks.
Yeah, because reading about swimming is very different from actually getting in the pool.
Exactly. You need that hands-on experience to truly develop fluency.
Okay, so how do we bridge that gap? How do we move beyond textbook English and into the realm of real talk?
Well, that's where things get a little more creative. It's about finding ways to immerse yourself in real-world English, beyond the classroom. Like, have you ever tried watching movies or TV shows in English?
Yeah, I do that sometimes, but I usually have the subtitles on. Is that okay? Or does that defeat the purpose?
It's totally fine to start with subtitles, especially if you're a beginner. It can help you follow along and pick up new words. But as you get more comfortable, try turning them off for a bit and see how much you can understand just by listening.
Okay, that's a good challenge.
Yeah.
And are there any, like, specific types of shows or movies that are better for language learning?
Honestly, the best thing is to choose something you genuinely enjoy watching. It could be comedies, dramas, documentaries, whatever floats your boat. The key is to make it fun, so you're actually motivated to keep watching.
That makes sense. If you're bored out of your mind, you're probably not going to absorb much.
Exactly. Now, speaking of fun, have you ever thought about using music to improve your English?
Oh, totally. I love singing along to English songs, even if I don't always understand all the lyrics.
And that's totally fine. Music is such a powerful tool for language learning. It helps you internalize rhythm, intonation, and even pick up new vocabulary without even realizing it. Plus, it's just enjoyable.
It's like a sneaky way to learn.
Exactly. Don't worry about singing perfectly or having a perfect accent. Just let loose, have fun, and enjoy the music.
Okay, so we've got movies, TV shows, music. Any other ideas for how to immerse ourselves in real-world English?
Well, something that a lot of language learners find super helpful is podcasts.
Like this one.
Exactly. Podcasts are fantastic because they expose you to a variety of accents, topics, and conversational styles. Plus, you can listen to them anytime, anywhere.
I've also heard that audiobooks can be really good for language learning.
Oh, absolutely. Audiobooks are a great way to immerse yourself in the language for longer periods of time. You can listen while you're commuting, exercising, doing chores.
It's like multitasking for your brain.
Exactly. And speaking of brains, let's talk about another big piece of the fluency puzzle that the experts keep emphasizing: mindset.
Ooh, yes. Mindset is everything, right?
It really is. The research shows that your thoughts and beliefs about yourself as a language learner can have a huge impact on your progress.
Like if you constantly tell yourself you're bad at languages, you're probably going to struggle more than someone who approaches learning with a positive attitude.
Exactly. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is where things like fear of judgment, lack of motivation, negative feedback, those can all become major roadblocks.
Yeah, because even if you have all the tools and resources, if you're constantly doubting yourself or feeling discouraged, it's going to be hard to make progress.
Right. It's like having a Ferrari but being too scared to put your foot on the gas.
So how do we overcome those mental roadblocks? How do we cultivate a more supportive, encouraging learning environment for ourselves?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to practice self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah, it's about being kind to ourselves, especially when we make mistakes.
Easier said than done. It's so easy to get down on ourselves when we mess up, especially when we're trying to learn something new and challenging.
I know, it's a natural human instinct. But the experts emphasize that mistakes are an essential part of the learning process.
Okay, yeah, I get that intellectually. Mistakes are how we learn. But emotionally, it can still feel pretty crummy.
It totally can. But it's about trying to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, try to see them as opportunities for growth. Like each time you stumble, you're actually gathering valuable information about what you need to work on.
So it's all about reframing those failures as stepping stones to success.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to do that is to celebrate the small victories along the way.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, instead of just focusing on the end goal of fluency, which can feel so far away, sometimes try to notice and appreciate those little moments of progress. Like, did you manage to order your coffee in English today without totally freezing up? That's a win. Did you understand a bit more of your favorite English podcast this week than you did last week? Awesome. Give yourself a pat on the back for those little achievements.
Yeah, because those little wins can really add up and boost your motivation.
Exactly. And that's so important because remember, learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint.
Consistency over intensity.
Yes. And that brings me to another point that the experts keep coming back to the power of listening for developing fluency.
Right, because just studying grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary words isn't enough.
Nope. You need to actually hear the language being spoken in a natural, authentic way. And that's where things like podcasts, audiobooks, movies, and TV shows come in.
It's about immersing yourself in the sounds of the language, right?
Yeah.
Getting a feel for the rhythm and flow of natural speech.
Exactly. And one thing that can be really helpful is to pay attention to connected speech. You know how words kind of blend together in natural
Oh,
conversation?
yeah, like how going to often sounds like gonna in casual speech.
Exactly. Textbooks don't always teach you those nuances, but they're essential for understanding how native speakers actually talk.
And for sounding more natural yourself, I guess.
Right. It's about fine-tuning your ear and training your brain to process those subtle differences in pronunciation.
So it's like a workout for your ears.
Exactly. And speaking of workouts, have you ever tried shadowing?
Shadowing. What's that?
It's where you listen to a recording of someone speaking English. It could be a podcast, an audiobook, whatever. And you try to repeat what they're saying at the same time, mimicking their pronunciation and intonation as closely as possible.
Oh, wow. That sounds challenging.
It can be, but it's a super effective way to improve your pronunciation, rhythm, and fluency.
I'm definitely going to have to try that.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into the challenges of achieving fluency, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the why behind language learning.
You mean like the deeper motivations for wanting to learn English?
Exactly. The experts we're looking at today highlight how understanding your personal why can make a world of difference in your learning journey. It's not just about, wanting to be able to order food or get directions. It's about tapping into that deeper purpose, that passion that's driving you to learn this language.
Right, because if you're just going through the motions, it's going to be a lot harder to stay motivated.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, I'd say take some time to really reflect on what drew you to English in the first place. What are you hoping to gain from learning this language?
That's a great question.
Is it about connecting with people from different cultures? Maybe it's about being able to understand those movies and songs you love.
Maybe it's for work or school.
Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe you're just curious about the language itself. Whatever it is, try to articulate it, even write it down. Having that clear sense of purpose can make all the difference.
It's like having a roadmap for your journey.
Exactly. It can help you stay focused and motivated, especially when you hit those inevitable bumps in the road. Because trust me, everyone hits those bumps.
Speaking of bumps, another thing that the experts talk about is how important it is to be patient with yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Fluency doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a whole lot of patience.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh,
Right?
I know. We live in such a fast-paced world, it's easy to get caught up in that I want it now mentality. But language learning is a process. It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination.
And celebrating those little wins along the way.
Exactly. Each step forward, no matter how small, is something to be proud of.
So to everyone out there who's working towards fluency, keep going.
Don't give.
Embrace those challenges. Find what motivates you. And remember that every little bit of effort you put in brings you one step closer to your goal.
And remember, it's not just about the end goal. It's about enjoying the process, exploring the language, and discovering all the amazing things that English has to offer.
Beautifully said. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the challenges of achieving fluency in English.
I hope everyone listening feels a little more informed, a little more inspired, and a little more ready to tackle those challenges head on.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, happy language learning.